most days I just want to be with her. I want to see my girl. I just want to see my girl.
Welcome to Grieving Out Loud. I'm your host, Angela Kennecke, and this week we shine a spotlight on National Fentanyl Awareness Day. Shockingly, this synthetic opioid has become the leading cause of death among Americans aged 18 to 45. As we speak, families across the nation are suffering the same tragedy as Kim Hix, who joins us today to share her heartbreaking story of losing her daughter to this deadly drug by taking a pill she thought was harmless. However, it was laced with a deadly dose of fentanyl. We can no longer turn a blind eye to this public health crisis, and by spreading awareness, we can start taking steps toward preventing more senseless deaths. Stay tuned for a powerful episode that will open your eyes to the devastating impact of fentanyl.
It's just unbelievable how this is just killing a generation of, it's just killing so many people. Over 300 people a day are dying from this fentanyl poisoning.
I heard it's like 9/11 every 10 minutes.
Yes.
It's like a 9/11 every 10 minutes. And
Right.
I thought that is something that will stick in my mind. Kim, the first thing I want to say is how terribly sorry I am for the loss of Kelsie. And I know you're just getting through this first year, and that is such a difficult time. And I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Angela. Yes, it is. It's more than difficult. As you well know, there's no words that could describe how painful it is.
Right. Tell me a little bit about Kelsie. She was 23 years old when she
Right.
died, but tell me about her leading up to that age.
Kelsie, well, actually, she was just a delight. She was my love. She was my heart. She was my girl. I called her my girl, and I called her my double rainbow baby because I had 2 miscarriages before I finally had her, and I was just completely in love with her from before she was born. I never let her out of my sight. As an infant or pretty much all of her life, actually. I took her everywhere with me. Luckily, I did not have to work when she was young. I went back to work when she was finally went back to school. So I just took her everywhere with me. I was completely enamored with her. But she had the hugest smile and the biggest eyes and eyelashes, even as an infant. Everywhere we went, people would remark on how huge her eyes and eyelashes were and how beautiful they were. She loved volleyball growing up. Like in middle school, she did volleyball and horses, and she always loved dogs. As she got older, she was everything into the celestial, astrology, numerology, crystals, that kind of thing. She loved talking to people about their horoscopes and their birth dates and just giving them all the information like that they wanted. She was also plagued terribly with depression starting in the 8th grade. In the 8th grade is when things really went on a downward spiral for her.
Researchers have found strong links between mental health disorders and substance use. In fact, a new study out of Washington University uncovered several genes that are often found in those who battle addiction. People who suffer from mental health issues also have those same genetics. Researchers say we need to start considering mental health when treating addiction.
When hormones kicked in, it seems like in the 8th grade, depression, major depression and anxiety kicked in, and we just never could get the depression under control for her.
It sounds a lot like my daughter in a way. She's just an amazing kid.
Yeah.
And the trouble sort of started happening at age 14, 15.
One of the ways Kim says her daughter tried to deal with depression was by experimenting with marijuana. That's becoming increasingly common. However, medical professionals strongly advise teens to avoid marijuana because of its potential impact on brain development. Some studies suggest that marijuana before the age of 18 may affect how the brain builds connections for functions such as attention, memory, and learning.
She also had very, very low self-esteem that really affected her, and she just never felt good about herself. As much as I loved her and her family loved her, and we tried to do everything we could to help her, and she had a great therapist that she would see every 2 weeks and a great doctor, she just never internally felt good about herself or could feel the love really coming from everybody. And she just started to get in with the wrong crowd. People started to show her different things, and she drifted towards it because she said, and she and I were very open. We talked about everything, and she told me everything. She just said that it helped her to numb out and to forget about how bad she felt about life and about herself and about having to live in the midst of the rage and everything.
I suppose you tried everything that you could to help her.
Yeah, I'm a very proactive person, and if something's wrong, I research and do whatever I can to figure something out, to solve problems. And I did everything I could to help her. Like I said, she had a wonderful therapist and she loved her therapist that she would go and talk to. I tried to offer different things like meditation and do you want to go do like equine therapy or art therapy or whatever it was that I thought might help her to feel better about herself. Anything she wanted to do that might help her to gain some self-esteem and to help her depression, and just nothing helped. She just turned to the drugs to numb out and to forget everything for that short amount of time.
That's so sad. And I'm sure that the drugs began creating problems for her and for your family.
They did, it's just a downward spiral. Like I said, she started with marijuana and then it started to lead to other things. And then she met a guy who turned her on to meth, and it just really went downhill from there. She would start taking like $5 here from me, and I would notice little bits of money would be gone. And I kept thinking, well, maybe I spent it somewhere. But I realized later that it was her taking it. And just, hanging around with it seemed like worse and worse types of people. And
Well,
wasn't
often when
great.
they feel more comfortable in a group of other users who accept
Right.
them and accept what they're doing. And in my daughter's case, there was a boy involved too that
Yeah.
introduced her to many of these substances like heroin, starting
Yeah.
with marijuana, but long-term boyfriend that later introduced her to heroin and other
Yeah.
drugs. And I just have a really hard time with that, with the influence, the outside influences of
Yeah.
other people. Do you have a hard time with that too?
Very much so. And this particular guy, he even admitted that he got her hooked on meth so that he didn't have to be addicted alone. And I just call him the devil. I'm sorry, but that's not nice, but he's sick himself, but he admitted to that's why he introduced her to meth. And once she did it, she was hooked. She went to rehab. She went to 3 rehabs. Each of them were 30 days at a time. They were wonderful places. And the 4th rehab was for 3 months. And she was wonderful. She was our daughter again for that short amount of time, but it never lasts. I mean, she would be home for just a few days and already be using again. She just couldn't kick it.
Did she use all of those drugs at once, or was there one that she liked the most or used the most often?
Yeah, meth was her drug of choice, mainly because she had an issue with body image and with weight, and meth helped her to lose weight.
Mhm.
She did not want to lose weight the proper way by eating healthy and by exercising. And my business, I am a health and fitness coach. So it did not help for people to compare her to me or for people to say, oh, if I had your mom, I would let her work me out or I would let her help me. And so I know that didn't help things, and I offered, I'll quit working, I'll quit my job if it makes you feel bad to be compared to me because I would do anything to help her. And she would say, no, it's fine. You don't have to do that. But she didn't like exercise and she didn't want to take the time to lose weight properly, and it takes long. You're not going to lose 10 pounds overnight or in a week. And meth would just kill her appetite and she would lose weight. So that's why it was her drug of choice.
Right. But it wasn't only meth. And so were these treatment programs, were they prescribing medications for her for opioid addiction because she also used heroin.
No, they did not actually. Like I said, she already had a doctor, a psychiatrist who prescribed medications for her for depression and for anxiety. She also had a seizure disorder. She fell down in 2016 in our garage and hit her head really bad, and it caused a lasting seizure disorder. So she was on quite a few medications for seizures, for the anxiety, and for depression. And none of these places, they just kept the medications in place that she was already on. I think one of the places did no, she was in the hospital at one time, and the doctor did put her on Suboxone, but that was the only other thing that was prescribed for her.
And what happened each time? Why do you think, because she went through treatment several times, why do you think she couldn't stay in recovery? Why do you think that was?
I think a lot of it had to do with her low self-esteem, and she just wanted to stay numbed out. She just hated herself. She just was so depressed all the time, and she just wanted to completely be numb. She told me, she said, "I'm not happy when I'm high, and I'm not happy doing drugs, and I'm not happy not doing drugs." She said, "I'm just not happy. I'm never happy." And she said the only time she found peace was when she was numb.
Mm. And so she gets out of rehab for the fourth time, right? And you
Yes.
mentioned, I've heard this over and over again, that people have this little window of like hope and their kid returns and it's the
Yeah.
person they once were. And you experienced
Yeah.
that.
The last rehab she was in was for 3 months, and it was just wonderful to see our daughter again, and it was the last 3 months before she died. She got out January the 17th, and I had a feeling that she was not gonna stay clean again because she gained a lot of weight in this recovery in the place that she was at, because they did all home cooking, Southern home cooking, macaroni and cheese and cornbread and really good food. And she put on a lot of weight. She was the heaviest she had ever been. And I just had a feeling she was going to go right back to the meth to try to get the weight off. She was out 3 days and back to using meth after being in for 3 months and being clean. And it just broke my heart because it was so nice to see our girl again. I mean, to see our real girl again for 3 months and to enjoy her and see her laugh. And it was fabulous because it was through Thanksgiving and through Christmas, and we got to go spend the time with her there because it wasn't far from where we lived, so we could see her every weekend, and it was just a beautiful gift to spend that time with her and to have our daughter back again for those 3 months.
So she relapsed. And what happened from there?
Well, she relapsed, and we talked about having to get help again. I kept telling her, "You cannot live the rest of your life like this." She had gotten herself into trouble with the law, as most people do, I believe, that get involved with drugs. She was on probation, and she kept breaking probation by doing drugs.
Well, because you know that the definition of addiction is people keep doing whatever it is, the drug or whatever,
Right,
despite negative consequences. The
right.
negative consequences don't matter to the addicted brain. They
No,
cannot stop, you
no, I
know?
know. And she would
Yeah.
get so mad at herself. She'd say, "I'm so stupid. I'm such an idiot. I don't know why I do it." I'm like, "Kelsie, you're not an idiot. You're not you've got a disease. You have a disease.
Right.
It's not, you're not stupid. You just have a disease, honey." But she would get so angry at herself when she would use, especially after she got out of treatment, and she would use, and she would get so angry at herself for letting herself fail and go back and use again.
I think that has to do with some of the misconceptions in our society and also the stigma that
Yeah.
people are made to feel like this is you, you're making
Yeah.
this choice, this is your
Right.
fault, when actually the drugs take over the brain.
Yes.
And at that point, they don't have a choice.
No.
It
No.
changes the brain and it
It
controls the
does.
brain. And people know what they're doing is wrong. People
Yeah.
know what they're doing.
They do. And she knew it, and she hated herself for doing it.
So that low self-esteem was made even lower by the
Yeah.
fact that she couldn't stop, I'm
Right.
sure.
Oh, it did. And she said that it did because she would just call herself stupid. "I'm an idiot." She hated what she was doing to herself, but she couldn't stop.
Oh,
And it
wow.
broke my heart. I mean, I just spent so many hours crying and crying because, I was so fearful of what was going to happen and what did happen because I knew it was going to happen eventually.
did she know about fentanyl?
She knew about it. She and I had spoke about it, and she knew about it, but she didn't say that she was using it.
Even though Kelsie wasn't using fentanyl, she wasn't safe from the drug, which can be deadly even in small doses. Because it's so cheap to make, drug manufacturers are using it to lace other drugs, such as heroin or street Xanax. The practice is leading to an alarming increase in drug overdose deaths. According to the CDC, more than 71,000 Americans lost their lives to synthetic opioids in 2021, with fentanyl being responsible for nearly 80% of adolescent overdose deaths. Unfortunately, in 2022, Kelsie became part of that statistic.
The day that this happened, she and I were just talking on our back porch, and we were talking about getting back into treatment because I said, Kelsie, you've got to get your life together. You can't keep living like this. You've got to get back into treatment because you're either going to die or you're going to be in prison. I said, and I'd much prefer you in prison than be dead. I said, but you've got to figure something out, and let's talk about getting back into treatment. And, she said, okay. And that was about 3:30. It was on a Saturday afternoon. My parents had come over for dinner. My husband was grilling for everybody. And at 5:30, 2 hours later, I found her in her room, sitting on her floor, cross-legged. She was slumped over, just saturated in her own vomit. I could hear her making sounds and stuff still coming out of her mouth. And of course, I start screaming and screaming her name, call 911. I start doing CPR on her, and she's already blue. My mom rushes up and helps me to do CPR, and she and I do it together. My mom was a nurse for almost 50 years. And we do CPR until the paramedics and everybody get here. It looked like we were in the middle of a forest fire. There were so many first responders here. I mean, both sides of our street were just lit up, but they worked on her for an hour, giving her Narcan and doing the shock treatment. After an hour, they were just getting ready to call time of death, and I'm screaming, don't stop, don't stop. And one of them said, wait a minute, I feel a pulse. I think I had found a pulse. And they did, and they rushed her to the hospital, put her on life support. And exactly 24 hours later, her heart just gave out.
You didn't have to make a decision to take her off life support.
No, they had already told us that she was gone, basically. They had already told us that her brain had stopped functioning and her organs were shutting down. They had already told us that she was not coming back. And we decided, I said, I am not taking her off of life support because I want to spend as much time with her as I can, singing to her and holding her hand. And we were just going to let her heart go when it decided to go. And it was exactly 24 hours later at 5:27 on Sunday night, February 27th.
How long did it take emergency workers to get to your house?
They got here quickly. It was probably about 10 minutes.
So I just wonder if you would have been able to administer Narcan to her even earlier. I don't know if it would have made any difference. Do you know?
I don't think so because there was no pulse. I mean, she was already blue. She was blue. There was no pulse.
And what did you learn killed her?
Fentanyl.
And
And
she
I-
thought she was getting what?
Xanax.
Xanax.
She thought she was getting Xanax. She had an anti-anxiety medication from her doctor, but I guess she preferred Xanax that she would get from friends or from whomever. And she got Xanax from this guy, and I quickly found out who it was because she did not know it, but I had the passcode to her phone. And when she was sleeping at night, I would sneak in and go through her messages and things and try to intervene, I guess. And I would delete a lot of messages from people sending her messages about, hey, I've got this or I've got that. So I would do a lot of things like that to try to prevent things
You're
from
trying to
happening.
control a situation that's out of
Yes.
control.
Yes.
Yeah. As a mom,
Yes.
I get that. I get that.
Yes.
So the person who sold it to her, were they charged?
Oh, they were charged. Yes. This guy had been arrested 30 times, starting at the age of 15, 30 times. 17 of those times were for drug possession, trafficking, and manufacturing.
The other thing that strikes me is just I was also there right after my daughter was basically dead when she was found, but the emergency crews were working on her. And I arrived at her apartment when the emergency crews were there, and I
Yeah.
was there. And I was so traumatized, still am,
Yes.
but the scene plays out in your head
Yes.
every single day. And when you bring up your scene that you dealt with, it brings up my scene. I feel a little bit sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
How have you coped with being the one finding her? How has your mother coped, with trying to save her?
Well, I have those images so often, and it's just been very difficult, but I think about it and I'm thankful that I'm the one that found her and that she was here because I know everything was done possible to save her. I've talked to parents who say their child was found somewhere else or whatever, and I don't know how I would be able to. I don't know how I'm surviving now. I mean, because most days I just want to be with her. I just want to I want to see my girl. I just want to see my girl. But at least I know everything humanly possible was done to save her. I was in my room, which is only a few steps from her room, and I had just decided to walk down there and talk to her like I always do, and I found her. I heard nothing. I heard nothing. I heard no sound come from her room, and I've often wondered about that. Why didn't I hear anything? I never heard anything.
There was nothing probably to hear because the fentanyl just shuts down
Yeah,
the body and shuts down the ability
right.
to breathe. And there was probably nothing to really
Yeah,
hear.
Have you lost a loved one to overdose or fentanyl poisoning? I'd like to invite you to share their story on our new Emily's Hope Memorial website called More Than Just a Number. They were our children, siblings, cousins, husbands, wives, aunts, uncles, and friends. So much more than just a number. You can submit a memorial today on morethanjustanumber.org.
but like I said, I'm glad that I found her because, like I said, she was still making sounds, and I know everything was done possible to save her. And if she had been anywhere else, I would have lived the rest of my life thinking, if this had been done, she might be alive. I would have worried with that the rest of my life.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing this story with me. I don't want to re traumatize you. I feel like sometimes I tell the story quite often when I speak to
Yeah,
groups, and I re traumatize myself when I tell about the day my daughter died and
yeah,
being there in her apartment. And it just brings it all back, like, as if it was
yeah,
happening all over again. And
yeah,
what do you do to take care of yourself now? And I know you're so early in this horrible grief journey. And
right,
after having joined, you and I are in this club, I always say that we didn't want to join and we can never leave. And it
right.
feels like a life sentence
It is.
oftentimes.
Yeah. Well, my outlet has always been my medicine has always been exercise. I mean, for as long as I can remember. I mean, that's not only my hobby, but it's also my career, my job. So that's what I do. And I'm thankful for that because I love all my clients. They're all great people, and I love going to work every day. And that's a blessing to be able to say, I love going to work every day and seeing my people and enjoying them and helping them to feel better about themselves. So that's what I do is take care of other people. That's kind of what I've always done, but my job is my outlet and exercise is my outlet.
I feel like exercise keeps me sane and also helps my brain. The
Right.
first few weeks, I couldn't exercise. I couldn't do anything the
I
first
couldn't
few
either.
weeks.
Me either.
But once I got back into it, I have to say that has been a lifesaver for me too.
Yeah.
I just feel
Yeah.
so much better. And if I miss it, I find myself getting a little more irritable and not dealing with things as well. I think
Right.
because this incredible trauma and complicated grief,
Right.
complex grief, or whatever you want
Right.
to call it,
Yeah.
when you lose a child in this way. Are you angry?
Yeah. I don't think I'm as angry now as I was, but very, very angry, and angry at God, very angry because I've spent 23 years praying, please take care of my daughter. Please don't ever let anything happen to her. She's the love of my life. Please don't ever take her from me. Please don't ever take her from me. And she's gone. I've been very angry. Yeah.
Yeah. I prayed too constantly, and it's like a dark cloud is following you around all these years that
Yeah.
you worry about them, and you
Yeah.
pray and pray and pray and pray, and you are hopeful and you have faith there's going to be a better
Yes.
outcome.
Yeah.
And then you do everything in your power to, which
Right.
I know I did. I'm sure you
Yeah.
did.
Oh, yeah.
Everything with knowledge you had at the time, steps
Yes.
you would take, like deleting her messages to try to protect her,
Yep.
just those kinds of things, just being a mom.
Yep.
And you and I both prayed for our daughters. And I always say that my prayers certainly were not answered in
No.
the way I wanted them to be. That's for
Right.
sure.
And, people will say, I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you. And I would finally just say, prayers don't work. You don't need
That's
to pray for me because prayers don't work. I've been praying my entire life. I prayed for both my children since the day they were born. And where's it gotten me? I feel like, where's it gotten me? But I've come to realize too, he didn't take her from me. And then I think, well, maybe he could have prevented it, but she had free will. She did not have to take a so-called Xanax that somebody else provided to her.
It's not uncommon for people to question their faith after suffering such a loss. According to Dr. Mark Vandenbroek, a grief educator, in a previous Grieving Out Loud podcast, he explained that questioning one's spiritual beliefs is one of the 4 primary ways we grieve.
That's why it's very important for people to recognize this is when people fall away from the faith the most or they get closer. And I always say in my human form, I have questions for God. When I see him, it'll probably be a different story.
People get angry at God, though, don't you think?
I think he can handle it, can't he? If he knows what's going on.
Or feel abandoned by God.
Absolutely.
Or question if there is even a God.
Absolutely.
Sadly, an increasing number of parents are grappling with these questions of grief because of the prevalence of fentanyl-laced drugs.
We all know fentanyl is a major game changer. So
Yes.
my daughter wasn't intending to die. Your
No.
daughter wasn't intending
No.
to leave you. And neither one of them knew that there was fentanyl in the drug that they chose to
No.
take. And that is murder.
Yes, it's murder. It is murder. And she was getting dressed to go to visit a friend. And, she had no idea she was taking fentanyl. She thought she was taking Xanax to chill out because she had the social anxiety. And she was not trying to kill herself. She was just trying to chill out. And it's not overdose. I'm so tired of hearing overdose.
Well, it's hard because they lump in all overdoses in the statistics. So out of all the people that die of overdose, this big, huge umbrella called overdose, 80% of those are fentanyl poisoning. So it is hard because the CDC doesn't distinguish it. And it is too much of an opioid, but they didn't intend to take too much of that particular synthetic opioid, right?
Right.
So, yeah, it is a little frustrating. And I hear that from people. And sometimes I use them interchangeably, but I try to be careful and say fentanyl poisoning / overdose, because I have a friend whose son died of meth overdose, or there's other people that die of a combination of drug, for overdose.
Yes.
So, but it's hard. I mean, I often say that this fentanyl being put into everything, it's not safe to take anything from anybody.
No.
And it's because we stigmatize the behavior of someone who's suffering from substance use disorder.
Right.
We don't stigmatize somebody going to a bar and drinking alcohol.
Right.
If people were putting fentanyl in the alcohol
Mhm.
in a bar, what would be happening?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But let's talk about what you've done with some of your grief, because not only do you and I both find exercise a good outlet,
Yeah.
not only did you and I both love our daughters fiercely,
Yeah.
not only do we both pray every single day and feel a little bit discouraged in trying to understand the meaning behind not having our prayers answered how we wanted, but you also started a nonprofit, which is what I did too. So tell me about that.
Well, I just felt like I had to do something, one, to keep busy and to keep my mind occupied and to let other parents know about this fentanyl because they didn't know. Parents didn't know and other kids did not know. They don't know what was going on. They had no idea what fentanyl was. And I just felt like I had to let other people know so they could warn their kids, have these conversations with their kids. You've got to talk to your children. They're at a party and they're so easy to persuade. Oh, hey, I've got some of these. Have one. It'll make you feel better. And if your best friend's offering you something, you're probably going to take it because you trust your best friend. You can't accept anything from anybody, and parents have to drive that into their kids' heads because chances are it's going to have fentanyl in it. And so I just had to do something to be able to send out all the information that I could find so that other parents could find out about it and read about it and know about it and tell their kids and warn them. Don't touch anything. Don't accept anything from anybody.
And you're raising money for a couple of different organizations through
Yeah.
Kelsie's cause?
Right. So what I'm doing is whatever funds that I raise, she loved dogs. She had 2 dogs, Gypsy and Lila. And so she loved animals and loved dogs. So whatever funds I raise, I'm giving money. All the funds go to, it's called Labor of Love Transport Rescue. And they take in dogs that have been abandoned or abused and they nurse them back to health. And then they adopt them back out. So the monies go to them, and then money goes to the Shalom Ministries, which is the recovery where Kelsie was for the last 3 months. It's called Shalom Ministries, and it's a recovery for just women with any type of addiction. So it could be gambling or, alcohol or shopping or any type of addiction whatsoever. So all the monies go to those 2 places.
Is it helping you?
It is helping me. It is helping me to know that, I've had so many parents say, thank you, keep it up. I had no idea. I'm talking to my kids. I'm talking to my students. They didn't know about this. I didn't know about this. I'll see one of your videos or I'll read one of your articles and I'll talk to my kids. I tell them Kelsie's story. And so the word is getting out. I also chartered and built a little free library since she loved everything celestial. It's got a crescent moon on the front door and stars. I've got it in my front yard. And inside of the little free library is all kind of information on fentanyl and drug awareness and Kelsie's cause. And then on the top shelf are books that neighbors or anybody could come and get a book out and take it home and read it or put books in there, whatever they want to do. So people can just come by anytime and get information on fentanyl out of the little free library as well.
All these things sound like wonderful tributes to your daughter. And how do you get support for yourself? Have you met other parents in your community who are dealing with this? Do you have
I
family
have.
support?
Yeah. I mean, my parents, they just moved up here in January, a few weeks before this happened, to be closer to me. My dad has Alzheimer's and my mother cares for my dad by herself. And she was really urged by his doctor to get closer to me so that I could help. And they just so happened to move up here right before this happened. So my mom has always been a wonderful support for me. So she has continued to be a really good support. My lifelong friends that I've had forever for 30 plus years are always around me and supportive. And I've met a lot of other families that this has happened to. Actually, a good church family that I know, a friend that I went to church with, the same thing happened to their son. He had really bad anxiety. This happened just 4 months before Kelsie. He took half of a pill that he thought was Xanax and he died. It's just unbelievable how this is just killing a generation of, it's just killing so many people. Over 300 people a day are dying from this fentanyl poisoning.
I heard it's like 9/11 every 10 minutes.
Yes.
It's like a 9/11 every 10 minutes. And I
Right.
thought that is something that will stick in my mind.
Yes.
And you're right. There's so many of us now. You're not alone, but it doesn't make it any easier.
Mm-mm. And I know the detectives that worked on our case have called me a couple of times and said, we just had a family their son passed or their daughter passed and they just need somebody to talk to. Can you talk to them? And so I've met some families that way. I also just testified in the Senate subcommittee hearings to try to get this bill passed in South Carolina that charges these dealers with homicide. We didn't have that bill here yet. I know other
Right.
states do, but we didn't.
Well, a lot of states don't. A lot of states don't have
Right.
that drug-induced homicide
Right.
bill. That's why
Right.
in my daughter's case, in the case of some other deaths around her time, it was actually charged in federal court because
Mhm.
they have stricter laws and the laws
Yeah,
more fit that. But you're right, like not every state has that. So that's great. Did it pass in South Carolina?
it did. It passed so they can be charged with fentanyl-induced homicide and also the trafficking bill that there's a maximum and a minimum sentence for the traffickers, heavier sentence for them also. That bill was passed that we wanted passed.
That's great. Well, I
Yeah.
love the advocacy work you're doing. It sounds like you're doing a lot of different things. And I really appreciate everything you're doing. I think if all of we parents who have lost a child in this way do our part in our little corner of the world
Yeah.
and we bring our voices together, I think we can really make a huge difference and
Yeah.
turn this thing around because it's out of control.
It's so out of control. And, every day if I'm on Instagram, the feed is just loaded with families. It's parents that are bringing the awareness. It's not our government doing anything about it. It's the families that are raising their voices and doing something.
Yeah, because your daughter should not have died 4 years after my daughter.
No.
It should have ended so long ago. I feel like I've been shouting from the rooftops for going on 5 years now,
Right.
and I don't know what it's gonna take, but you're right. It's this swelling up of people in grief because there's
Yeah.
a ripple effect. For every
Yeah.
death, you think about how many people Kelsey's death has affected.
Yeah. It's just unbelievable. Like I said, the amount of people, and it's all for greed. It's greed. It's for money.
Yes.
It's sickening.
Yes. Sometimes I think it feels like chemical warfare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I so appreciate you taking the time and sharing Kelsie with me and with our listeners. We do have quite a lot of listeners now all across the country because there's a lot of people like you and I out
Yeah.
there. So
Yes.
I think the
Unfortunately.
more people understand they're not alone and
Yeah.
the more people share their grief and openly talk about it, the better. So, and thank you for everything that you're doing also
Oh,
with
thank you,
Kelsey's
Angela.
cause.
I appreciate it.
Take care of yourself,
Yeah.
please.
Yes.
Be gentle and kind to yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, but thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Grieving Out Loud. If you or someone you know is struggling with substance use disorder, please visit our website, emilyshope.charity, for resources and support. By working together, we can make a difference in the fight against this horrible drug epidemic. Your support is crucial to helping us raise awareness. Please consider leaving us a positive review or sharing this episode with your friends and family. Together, we can make a difference and save lives. Thank you for listening. We look forward to bringing you more inspiring stories and helpful resources in the future. Until then, wishing you faith, hope, and courage. This podcast is produced by Casey Wonnenberg King and Anna Fye.